Hi, everyone. Good afternoon to all the subscribers of GCS Inclusion Series. We are here again with another episode of GCS Inclusion, and today we're going to talk about remote working, which is the way we all are working for last, I think, couple of years since the pandemic hit all of us. So I work at GCS and I take care of the recruitment delivery in the Ireland. And I think it's very relative subject for us, especially me working in the recruitment. So I will be talking to our guest today, who is Elizabeth Pinar, who is working at Sage as a product engineering manager. And she's gonna talk to us about how remote work affects all of us. So I welcome Elizabeth on the remote, this episode today. So welcome, Elizabeth. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks,
And
Naveen.
how are you doing?
I'm very well.
All
It's
right.
nice to see you.
Same here. It's good to have you on the call today on this episode of GCS Inclusion, where we are talking about remote working and how we all are working through remote working and how it affects all of us and people in your industry, in your company, and people around all of us. So the topic is remote working. So I just want to start, our episode today with one of the question, how can remote working impact a company's diverse hiring? So can you help us a little bit about yourself, maybe a little bit background of yours, and how is remote working affecting people in your surrounding or in your company's diverse hiring process?
hmm well, I've been working at Sage for over 6 years now, and like most of us, I've been mostly remote since March 2020. So it was a big change for us. We were all in the office pretty much every day until the 13th of March, 2.5 years ago. And we've had to adapt. We've had to change the way we interact. We've had to find ways of doing things that we used to do simply by walking over to somebody's desk and kicking it and saying, hi, can you help me with this? What's going on here? But I think that overall the benefits of remote working outweigh the downsides. You have to find ways of making it work. In some ways, you have to work differently, but the rewards are great for myself, for my team. It works brilliantly.
Great, great. So do you think working remote is something which is more beneficial as an employee and as a team rather than working on site in office? Like, which more do you think is more preferential nowadays with people when you hire people for your team?
Well, my team at the moment includes two people who live in the UK and one who's based in Germany. So there's no possibility of us all being in the same office anyway. And
Yeah.
in a sense, when you are all working from home, it democratizes the team dynamic because everybody is dialing in. You don't have 4 people or 5 people in a room together and then a couple of people on screens. That that unbalances the contribution of each member of the team because the people in the room have a greater presence. The people on the screens tend to get overlooked and ignored simply because they're not physically in the room. So when we're all dialing in, we're all on the same level, and it just works better for us.
Right, right, right. And so, another question is like, what challenges can remote working raise for leadership and especially for employees like you might have faced in last days?
So there are definitely challenges for individuals, depending on how you live, where you live. A sense of isolation does affect some people um, because they live alone, because they don't necessarily know their neighbors. They might be new in town and not know very many people, and their social circle was their work colleagues. So that is a problem for some people. Um, the other problem that I've noticed, partly with myself and also with a lot of colleagues, is that rather than getting a work-life balance, you actually lose the distinction between where work ends and life begins.
Right.
Um, So it just rather than working from home, you're actually living at work, and you don't switch off, either literally or figuratively. You don't switch off at the end of the day. People forget to take lunch breaks, and that can be a real problem. It leads to burnout because you don't strike the right balance between what's work and what's the rest of your life.
Right, right.
And for leaders, I think we've all heard about the Great Resignation. As someone in recruitment, I think you would be well aware of this. And it's not it didn't start with the pandemic and with working from home, but it certainly accelerated during the pandemic when people started looking at what they did for a living, maybe with a bit of distance between themselves and the office, maybe with a bit of time for introspection, and realized that they didn't really enjoy what they were doing. There was no meaning for them. There was no sense of purpose, I suppose, in their jobs. And something that I've noticed more recently, I don't know that it's necessarily a phenomenon, but it seems to have struck a chord with people, is this concept of quiet quitting, where people don't resign. They stay in their jobs, but they don't do anything beyond the bare minimum. They kind of keep the wheels turning. They put in the hours, but there's no sense of commitment or enthusiasm or involvement in their jobs. It's essentially a lack of engagement from people. And it's we talk about millennials looking for purpose and meaning in their jobs, but it's not just millennials who look for this. We all want to feel that what we do is valuable, is worthwhile, and that our efforts are recognized. And if you do go above and beyond and do the best job you possibly can and put in extra hours and create something that you think is meaningful, and you get no reward and no recognition for that extra effort, you do lose interest and you lose enthusiasm for the job. And I think, although it's again not tied to working from home, I think it does happen more that people are ignored, that they lose a sense of where they fit into the team, what their purpose is. And I think it's really important for managers, for leaders, to recognize what people are doing, how involved they are, if they feel like they are contributing, if they feel like their job is worthwhile, and if they don't, it's your job as a leader, as a manager, to address that, to make sure that everybody feels recognized and is properly rewarded, that their work is acknowledged, and that they feel that they have a purpose, that there's a point to them showing up every day.
Right.
So that's what I think.
Right. And I think it's this, when somebody is not interested in working in their job, I mean, it affects them internally, it affects all part of their life. I mean, not just work. They feel,
Yes.
as you said, they feel isolated, and they are more prone to, like maybe, I think, some kind of diseases as well. They have high stress, high anxiety levels, and
Yes.
I think it affects all part of life, when we're not happy at work. So I think it's very important for employee as well. Definitely, a manager has a right to take care of his team as a family member. Like, everybody should be equally taken care of. But I think as an employee, we also should be talking to our peers and maybe having a good communication with our peers and managers especially, so that at least if
Yes.
they are not attending us, I think we should go to them and tell them that I'm feeling this and this, so maybe you can help. Because asking for help is a very big thing nowadays. Not too many people are actually opening up themselves and asking for help. I think it's a very big skill.
Yes. This asking for help and being honest and saying, I don't get the point of this, or I don't think that we should be doing this. There has to be a two-way communication. I agree absolutely. But I think that the initial openness to communication has to come from the leader. You have to make it clear as a leader that you are open to listening, and that you do properly listen, and don't brush things aside as, well, that's your job, just go do it, because that doesn't foster any kind of enthusiasm.
Right.
People need to know why, and to feel it.
Yeah. Because I can see, in our team at GCS, especially, I can talk about my team where I work. We have leaders, who are constantly, communicating with us. Guys, let us know if you're feeling stuck or you are having some issues. Just let us
Mm,
know. So they are very, very, detail oriented in terms of if somebody is feeling stuck. So they just get to that person and talk to them and talk it out. What the problem might be, and this has
yeah.
created a very fine balance. I mean, everybody's performing well, whether they are working from remote or whether they're working from office, and they feel kind of part of team. Like they are all equal, and it's not that somebody who is just started with us like recently or somebody who have been with the team like for years. So all of us are acting like an equal contributor, and I think leaders, as you rightly said, has a large responsibility to maybe put put themselves in front of all of us and give the guiding light to all the members of the
Mhm.
team.
Especially the newest members of the team.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. And so like my third question is definitely coming to the same thing. Like what are the three pieces of advice you would give to leaders managing remote or diverse team?
Um, the first thing is something that works very, very well for me, and it comes really from Scrum, from the way of working in Scrum, and that's to have a daily meeting with your entire team every single day, same time every day. It's a short meeting. If you're not doing Scrum, it doesn't have to be a daily stand up. It could just be something called a huddle, but a daily check in with everybody, like a good morning to everybody, to see what everyone's doing today, what they did yesterday, and if there are any obstacles to what
Right.
they're trying to do. And it's a daily check in with everybody, with the whole team. Cameras on, if you if everyone's comfortable with that. That's really important because it's not just what people say; it's how they interact in that team call. So that's I mean it's a really simple thing. Just put in a daily call for 15 minutes every morning.
Mhm.
Um, I think the second thing is slightly more complicated, and that's to get to know people, and especially again the new people in your team. Get to know them as people. Um, don't treat people like resources. They're not resources. They're people. They're three-dimensional people, and this is something that is slightly more difficult when you're remote because if you're in an office, you see people every day. You say hi. You meet them on the way to coffee, or while you're having coffee, you talk about what they did on the weekend, and you find out, what movies people watch, who goes cycling, who's plays badminton, who's doing karate. You just get a sense of who these people are.
Right.
Um, and when you're working remotely, even though they're all in their homes, you don't necessarily get to know them as people. They're just their faces on a screen. So I think you need to take the time to get to know people, especially the newest people in your team that you may never spend time with in the office. Um, and you're a people manager, so you need to get to know
Right.
people. Um, and I think the third thing comes back to the idea of disengagement. I think you need to find out what makes people tick, uh, what what makes them enthusiastic about their jobs, what um, what their motivation is, and make sure that everybody is engaged in their job, understands why it's important, understands what needs to be done, and rather than telling people what to do, tell them what needs to be done and help them
Mhm.
to do it. Take away the obstacles, and allow them to do the best job that they can. And that takes that's really the rest of your time is making sure that your team is performing as well as they possibly can and that they understand the purpose of what it is they're doing and that they feel involved and enthusiastic about their jobs. They're engaged.
Right. Right. Man, I mean, on the last point that you just mentioned, just uh, letting them know and leading by example. I think one of the key things which I've learned in like 10 years of my career is that, when a manager gives the newcomers in the team ample time or ample space to make mistakes and not to be, guilty of making a mistake, because this is how we learn, right? So
Of
I
course.
think making a mistake and owning that mistake, and I think
Mm.
you know coming up with the new solutions, I think that makes us what experience is all about. So I
Yes.
think making mistakes should also be encouraged in the team. If you are new and you feel, even if you're old, I think everyone make mistakes, right? So
Of
I
course.
think we all should encourage people in the team to make mistakes and maybe learn from those mistakes and actually help others in the team what they have learned from those mistakes, so that maybe
Mhm.
others can learn and maybe do another new kind of mistakes, because
Mhm.
this is how we learn. So
Of
I
course.
think
Nobody ever learned to ride a bicycle without falling off a couple of times. You
right,
everybody falls off. But you have to, without that experience, you'll never ride a bike. So yes, I agree absolutely.
because-
A sense of blaming people for trying something new is always
right,
going to backfire. Yeah.
right. Because I've seen some people complaining about this, that I'm working with someone who is not appreciating my work efforts, and when I make mistakes, they kind of going over them all the time and saying why you did this, why you did that. I think
Mm,
as a manager, you have the responsibility to make them feel more comfortable and make more
yeah.
mistakes. I think so. That's really well, which you just mentioned in the last point.
Mm.
And also, on the fourth question I have for you is like, what is a lean-in circle, and why was it created? And is this different than an employee resource group, the lean-in
Yes.
circle?
They are different. So one is sort of top down. The employee resource group is something that is organized and kind of hosted by the company itself. A lean-in circle, the lean-in comes from Sheryl Sandberg's book. People who'd read the book wanted to get together and talk about it, but it's really just a kind of a branded version of of a colleague network, a group of like-minded colleagues getting together and talking to each other. Um, I've been part of both, and I think that both are really useful and necessary, and they're actually complementary. So the circle, whether you call it a lenient circle or not, is really from the ground up. It's colleagues getting together with each other to talk about things that are important to them, um, to to swap ideas, to swap problems and solutions, and also for validation. If you are part of a minority group, and women in tech companies are still a minority group, it
Right,
can feel like when things don't work out for you, you can feel like it's always me. It's the problem is mine, and when you are with other people who have experienced very similar things, you get validation for you know for the problems that you've had, and you realize that the problem is not you, the problem is the system,
right.
and you can talk through things and find solutions among yourselves. But if you are in a company that also has a formal uh, resource group hosted by the company, what comes out of the lean-in circle or the employee network should feed up to the company's group, the ERG, so that changes can be made at a company-wide level, because it's there where you can change policy, you can have programs like mentoring, you can change the way you deal with harassment, you can change things on a company level. There's a limited amount that a colleague network can do to change the world, or at least
Mhm.
to change the company, but it's necessary for that safe space for people to talk through what it is they're experiencing, and to find solutions for themselves that then they can feed up to the company to make the changes for everybody else. So I
Right,
think both are important and necessary, and we have both at Sage. So
great.
I'm pleased to say.
Thank you for those beautiful answers. I think we have a lot of comments coming in our chat where people are, uh, you
Mhm.
know, looking to answer, looking for the answers. I think one of the common question is that, how can we solve the challenge of making people feel heard and included when they're working remotely in comparison to people working in the office? So, what do you think?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and I sort of touched on it earlier. When you have some people in the room and some outside of it, and you have to, if that is how your team works, if you have some people in the office and some remote, you have to make a concerted effort on every single call to include the people who are on a screen and not in the room. Call on them by name, ask them for their opinions, make sure that they can be heard, that everybody in the room is not just talking over them. Make sure that they are present, and large screens with cameras on is essential. If it's a voice on a phone on the desk, it's almost inevitable that they will be sort of ignored. And the other thing is, if you can, do a once a quarter or twice a year get together of everybody in the office, bring everybody together, maybe at the start of a new project or at the start of a new cycle or a new year, and include people in person if you can swing that, because that again gets people to know each other as people, and once you've met someone, once you've had coffee with them and talked to them face to face, really face to face, your relationship with them is different. So it's much easier, I think, to have a remote team when you already know the people. It's more difficult. It's possible, but it's more difficult when you've never actually got to know them in person.
Right. All right. I think
I hope that answers the question.
yes. I think some of our viewers maybe can answer that if they have got the answers. I think great. I think this was the major question that we had. So I think we have covered a lot of ground. We have covered a lot of questions around remote working and how we can cope up with the challenges and what things can be done by leaders and employee likewise. So I think we're coming to an end of this session. So I would like to thank you, Elizabeth, for joining us today, and all the viewers who have been a part of this episode. And thank you for asking all the questions. I think you were able to answer your question. If you still face any questions which is left here, maybe you can reach out to us and post a question to our diverse GCS inclusion page, and maybe we will try to answer those questions in the upcoming episode. Thank you, Elizabeth, for your time, and
Thanks very
thank
much.
you for joining us. Thank you. You have a good day, and
you.
hope to meet you soon. Maybe some other episode of GCS.
Thanks, Naveen. Bye.
All right. Thank you. Bye bye.